Welcome everyone to our second President's Lecture. We've been running a series of President's Lectures since May. This is the second one, The Wounds of War, Healthcare on and Off the Battlefield. I really want to thank you so much for coming out today. I just want to say briefly something about these President's Lectures that we've been holding. We see this as an opportunity to open up the university, to use the university, to use our space as a forum for ideas, to use our expertise, to invite people in, and to let the world know about some of the good things that we're doing and some of the interesting things we're doing. We want to take on some of the more challenging issues involving healthcare and higher ed and academic medical centers. This panel discussion is inspired by the work of university behavioral health care, specifically Chris Kossoff, the president and CEO of UBHC. I don't think you could find a person on campus at this university more proud, more of a booster of his school and his people and the work that they do. Chris is unrelenting in his talk about my people, what we're doing, and in just all different areas. You know, UBHC has programs throughout the state providing mental health and behavioral services. It was based on Chris's conversations, though, about the work that his staff is doing with the military that we decided to take a look at this particular area, the area of providing health care. This is not a discussion about foreign policy. It's not a discussion about the pros and cons of war, but it's about the people who serve and the people who serve the people who serve, our healthcare providers. Chris, I'd like you to meet Chris Kossoff, President and CEO of UBHC.
Thank you, Diane. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I think this promises to be a fascinating discussion today. And I'd like to give a special welcome. We have two special veterans here today. First, I'd like to welcome Harold Dinzis. Harold served in both the Second World War and the Korean War. And secondly, I'd like to welcome Jerry Kossoff, who served in the Second World War and raised me. Both qualify him for combat pay. I'd like to ask you to use your imagination for just a couple of minutes. I want you to step into the shoes of a citizen soldier, someone with a good job, a nice home, a family, as Zorba the Greek called it, the full catastrophe. As a citizen soldier, you are a member of the New Jersey National Guard. You just received your orders. You're going to Afghanistan. This is your second call to active combat in the past 3 years. You will be gone for 12 months, and you have a 14-month-old baby. The separation will be hard on you and on your family. Your 12-month tour of duty is both dangerous and demanding, but it is now coming to an end. Fortunately, you will be returning to the U.S. without any physical injuries, although this isn't the case for all of the soldiers in your platoon. What has kept you going through all of this is the anticipation of being reunited with your spouse and your child. The reunion will be at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and it will surely be a great day. The long-awaited day arrives, and you can see your spouse and your child waiting for you. You run up to give them both big hugs and kisses, and your baby starts screaming, having no idea who you are. Things have changed since you left your home and your job. Yes, the stress of the combat zone is over, but the more subtle stresses of resuming life as a citizen are just beginning. Since you are in the New Jersey National Guard, support for this phase of your transition is the best in the country. You have a 24/7 hotline to call, which will be answered by specially trained combat veterans, someone who understands the challenges of both war and returning home from war, someone who has a wealth of resources available to serve you. You will have monthly meetings to check on your adjustment to civilian life and help get you anything that you need to make this flow more smoothly. UMDNJ operates that special veteran support line and also assists with the screening of soldiers returning from the war zones. We are committed to supporting our troops, our citizens. We at UMDNJ consider it a privilege to work with our soldiers and with the New Jersey Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. It is the creative thinking of Major General Glenn Reith and Colonel Stephen Abel that has led to the wide array of services and the clear difference in the treatment of New Jersey soldiers. They understand that the risks to our soldiers don't end when they leave the war zone. It is now my honor to introduce the leader who oversees this all. Major General Glenn Reith earned his bachelor's degree from the Citadel, where he was the distinguished military graduate. He entered the Army in 1980 and became a helicopter and fixed-wing pilot. Yes. His military career is marked with numerous distinctions. To mention a few, the Meritorious Service Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, the Army Commendation Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and in 2002 he earned his first star, and then in 2005 was promoted to Major General. In 2002, General Reith was appointed as the Adjutant General for the state of New Jersey. Please welcome Major General Reith.
Thank you, Chris. And let me just say right up front, I am delighted to be here to talk about the citizen soldier. And on behalf of Governor Corzine, the Commander-in-Chief of the New Jersey Army and Air National Guard, some 8,000 strong, let me say thank you to Dr. Owens, to Chris, and the entire UMDNJ team. You have been unbelievable partners through the mobilization process for today's citizen soldier. And as Chris indicated, many of our soldiers are being deployed overseas. To date, over 13,500 citizen soldiers from the state of New Jersey have deployed across the full spectrum of military operations. Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, Turkey, wherever there's been a need for an American soldier, we have been a force provider to that combatant commander somewhere around the world. And these youngsters have done a phenomenal job. Today's National Guard is no longer a strategic reserve. It's an operational force. Any youngster today that joins the National Guard will deploy overseas. There is no question about that. If there's a need over the next 20 years, there'll probably be 4 deployments, because the Army Force Generation model dictates that about 1 in 5 years, the units within our formations will be deployed. There are a lot of challenges fighting this war, and this will be a war. It's a transgenerational war. I mean, there is a committed enemy out there that wants to disrupt our way of life, and that's a fact. And for the nation to continue to fight this war, the reserve components, the Guard, will play a critical role. 1 in 2 soldiers are citizen soldiers. 48% of the combat strength that we generate from the Department of Defense come from citizen soldiers. It all says United States Army, and a lot of people don't recognize that 1 in 2 are citizen soldiers. But that is a fact. And if we're going to continue to have the numbers, and the President's going to make a tough decision in the next couple of weeks, but if there's a ramp up in Afghanistan, I can assure you a large number of those soldiers will be citizen soldiers. And we've learned a lot over the last 7 years as we've used this what was one time a strategic reserve as an operational force, and there's been many challenges. But I will tell you that the United States Army has gotten it right as we transition kids back home. because we have what we refer to as a yellow ribbon 30, 60, 90-day reintegration program. And where UMDNJ has been an invaluable partner is at that 60-day mark, because that's when we sit down with these youngsters and we talk about that hidden issue, the emotional strain of fighting an asymmetrical threat, where 18 and 19-year-old youngsters are experiencing some really bad things. Children and women and people indiscriminately getting killed on the battlefield and not knowing who the enemy is. And that's what these kids are coming home and having to deal with. PTSD is alive and well. Post-traumatic stress disorder is something we as a nation did not understand after World War II. Many came back home and turned to the bottle and unfortunately never transitioned back home. Vietnam, a lot of the same happened, but they turned to drugs. And today we're dealing with a lot of those issues with homeless Vietnam veterans. The nation is dealing better with it today. But I'm here to say thank you to UMDNJ for all the professional services and all the time that they have devoted to all of our soldiers that have come back from the theater. And we hit that at the 60-day mark. And then at the 90-day mark, we look at the medical and the dental piece. So we're doing a good job of transitioning these kids back home. But again, at the end of the day, I firmly believe that we owe it to them. It's morally the right thing to do, because we all have got to remember that each and every youngster that raises their right hand is joining an all-volunteer force. And that's a fact. They are making a choice to join today's National Guard. They are making a choice to join America's team to bring the fight overseas. And I know we're not talking politics, but at the end of the day, I think we all recognize we as Americans have had the opportunity over the last 8 years to enjoy the American way of life and not have a follow-on terrorist incident because of the American soldier bringing the fight overseas. So again, to the entire team, Dr. Owens, Chris, invaluable members. You know, Admiral Mullen, the #1 military uniformed person in our forces, was here in New Jersey 3 weeks ago. And he had asked me a question. He said, why is New Jersey so successful on transitioning soldiers back home? Because unfortunately, within our Army today, staggering statistic, we're averaging a suicide a day. Staggering. We now exceed what is the private sector. Suicide a day. Within the ranks of the New Jersey National Guard, we have not had a suicide. There's a darn good reason for that. It goes back to that 24/7 vet-to-vet hotline. Our kids know they can reach out, talk to a veteran, and then if they need help, they can get the professional care to ensure that they don't exercise bad judgment and take their life after spending a year of their life in Iraq or Afghanistan. And I can think of nothing as a father or just as an American that we should be concerned more about than having a youngster take their life after defending our way of life. Thanks so much for what you're doing. We're going to continue to partner with you, and I can assure you that your National Guard will be out there, out in front, doing what's right for our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, General Reith. It's now my privilege to introduce the two moderators for today's discussion. And first, let me introduce Dr. Kenneth Swan. Dr. Swan has been a professor of surgery here at New Jersey Medical School since 1976, with more than 300 scholarly articles to his credit. In 1980, Dr. Swan instituted the Level 1 Trauma Services at University Hospital, which remain a vital part of the services to the Newark community today. Dr. Swan has also had a distinguished career in the U.S. military. While a medical student at Cornell, he enlisted in the Army, and in 1968, he joined the Army Medical Corps. His active duty spanned more than 30 years, including service in Vietnam and the Persian Gulf, for which he is much decorated. In many ways, his true introduction to surgery was, in fact, on the battlefield. Please welcome, as one of today's moderators, Dr. Swan. Dr. Swan? Our second moderator for today is Sheree Castellano. Sheree is a program administrator and a clinician at University of Behavioral Health Care. Her boundless energy and commitment to unique crisis services to those who protect us has distinguished her career. She has received national recognition for starting and running the first peer support hotline for police officers in the United States. Cop to Cop continues to thrive and serve as a national model. Based on Cop to Cop, Sheree has been instrumental in starting and building the UMDNJ Veteran Support Hotline. Please welcome Sheree Castellano.
Good morning, everyone. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce our panelists today. So let's begin. If I can ask you to stand. Dr. DeSantos is a 1997 graduate of UMDNJ School of Osteopathic Medicine. Currently, he's an emergency department physician and fellow at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. He's also a master's degree candidate at UMDNJ School of Public Health in Piscataway at UMDNJ also. He served in Iraq as a physician, and he remains on active duty in the United States Navy. Welcome, Dr. DeSantos. Dr. Joseph Costa, a 1986 graduate of UMDNJ Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in Camden, and now a clinical assistant professor of surgery at the UMDNJ School of Osteopathic Medicine in Stratford, as well as a surgeon practicing in the Camden area. Dr. Costa completed 2 tours of duty during the current conflicts in Kuwait in 2005 and in Iraq last year. Welcome, Dr. Costa. Audrey Brooks is a nursing instructor at UMDNJ School of Nursing, based in Stratford. She was deployed in 2004 to Landstuhl, Germany, to serve as a flight nurse, and now holds the rank of Major in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. Welcome, Audrey Brooks. Joseph Izo, a transition assistance advisor at the New Jersey Department of Military and Veterans Affairs in Lawrenceville. While serving with the U.S. Army near Baghdad in 2004, he suffered a severe eye wound and other injuries during combat when a rocket-propelled grenade exploded near his vehicle. Help me welcome Joseph Izo. Carl Cuttino, a fourth-year student here at New Jersey Medical School. He is a first lieutenant in the New Jersey Army National Guard and has been active in the reconstitution of veterans returning home this year to New Jersey. Welcome, Carl. And Chuck Arnold, a colleague of mine at UMDNJ University Behavioral Health Care. He has been a peer counselor with the New Jersey Veterans For You Helpline program since its inception in 2005 and actively counseled many veterans who have returned to New Jersey this year. Chuck saw active duty in Cuba and in Vietnam during the 1960s, and after discharge from the Marine Corps, served in the New Jersey Army National Guard for 32 years. Welcome, Chuck. Going off script for a moment, I'd like to acknowledge someone in the audience, if I could. Rich DeVoren is a colleague of ours at the Veterans Helpline, and he's also a Gold Star family member. As a retired Air Force veteran who served during Vietnam, Rich lost his son, Seth, who was killed in Iraq in 2004. I'd like to ask you to stand, please, Rich. Welcome, Rich.
So I'd like to ask our panelists to tell us what you have to bring to this group and what makes you nervous about sitting here, and what are you most proud of in terms of your service. And Commander DeSantos, let's start with you.
Well, having been an emergency medicine doctor now for 3 years, I went to Iraq about 1 year out of residency, and that experience really brought to me a lot of challenges that residency can never show you. Our lethality from war, from the time of World War I to Iraq, has gone down dramatically. Our combat-related deaths are down to nearly about 10%. And that is due to various different things. One of the things is logistics, that we now are deploying medical units up front with our combat troops. There are medical units in the form of shock trauma platoons and surgical shock trauma platoons that are within 15 to 60 minutes of combat. And being up close like that provides us the opportunity to salvage individuals that potentially may not have been salvageable in the past. Our mortality has decreased because of our logistics presence and also practicing evidence-based medicine in the front lines.
Thanks very much. Captain Costa.
I would just echo.
Incidentally, he's a vascular surgeon and a general surgeon. He's the most qualified to be in the combat zone in the operating room. He's got all the talents, and we're lucky he was there.
Thank you very much. I just echo what Dr. DeSantos said. I would just like to say this, Mr. Sergeant, I could tell from this morning, I knew you were a Marine. I could just tell. I knew it. I just knew it. Let me just say this, and this was part of what I let Mr. Foreman know. When I first got deployed, or actually when I first joined the Navy, I had signed up during my vascular fellowship, and part of the reason why I had joined was because the words that John F. Kennedy had spoken back in his inaugural speech about ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country, really rang true in my head. I think that's important with everything, including my contributions to UMDNJ on an annual basis when they ask me for money. You do need to give back to those organizations that have got you to where you are. We don't do this in a vacuum. So I thought, well, I hadn't served in the military. I hadn't served my country other than doing my own personal thing. I thought it was important to give some time back, and I had only planned on staying in for several years, do my service, and then come back to civilian life. Having had 2 deployments, both in theater, the last one being in a forward operating area, actually with Dr. DeSantos, we were in the same unit, so this is kind of like homecoming for us. I have somewhat changed the prime directive, and although I still think it's important to give back to our country, I have become more enamored with the individuals that I am deployed with. Those individuals like Sgt Izo, who put their lives on the line to keep us safe. And so for me, I'm proud to be there elbow to elbow with them, even though sometimes it's not the safest area. You've given up the comforts of home. You've left your family to support them because they're keeping us safe. So I am very proud to do that. In terms of being nervous, I hang out with the Marines. There's very little that makes me nervous anymore.
Thank you very much. And Major Brooks. Major Brooks is a flight nurse, and she's the angel in the air that tucks those casualties in when they fly to Germany and when they leave Germany and come home. And it's an awesome responsibility because they don't have doctors on board, and they got a lot of sick people on board.
Part of the reason why I joined the military, I've had a long-standing career as an emergency/trauma nurse, and felt that there was more that I could do. So I joined the Air Force, and I wanted to do something that cared for a large group of patients, and for me, flight nursing was the way to go. During my deployment was in the early part of the war when we were seeing a lot of mass casualties who had more significant and serious injuries because of the lack of body armor, unsafe vehicles. So we were seeing a lot of amputations, a lot of significant head injuries and chest injuries. But it was an honor for me to bring those soldiers home. They were getting quality care on the battlefield, and it was my responsibility, which was a huge responsibility, to return these soldiers to their families in the best possible condition that we could. The aircraft is considered a flying hospital, so we can do everything for them that a hospital can do. 90% of the time, it's just our nurses, usually 2 to 3 nurses with 2 to 3 technicians with an aircraft that can hold up to 103 people. But my largest mission was 70 patients. If they were really seriously injured, we would fly with a CCAT team, which is 1 critical care nurse, 1 respiratory therapist, and a physician. But most of the time we flew by ourselves. So the care that was provided for emergencies in the air, we had to know what we needed to do to provide care for that patient. It was also an opportunity to talk with the soldiers because they had 5 to 6 sometimes 8 hours of flight, to hear what their concerns were for what they were going to be dealing with when they got home, which gave us a better perspective on what we should be providing in the air besides physical care. And then once they get to Germany and or back to a hospital in the United States, what other care is needed for them. And that played a big role in part of the post-traumatic stress because they would talk to us in that time. A lot of their feelings would come out and we were able to pass that on. So it's been an honor for me to care for these soldiers, and they are really the most important. I'm just helping them along. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Sgt Joan Izo, you're the only member of the panel that is a receiver of care, although we all probably had some care along the way, but you're what it's all about, and we know we're going to hear from you about the time you spent at Walter Reed, but we'd love to hear a little bit more from you as you see it at this point. Thanks very much for coming, and tell us why you're here.
Thank you, Doctor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joan Izo. I'm a retired sergeant, and I'm nervous because I'm the lowest-ranking guy sitting on this panel. I've been standing at attention and parade rest all morning. But on a serious note, it's an honor to be here, and I hope I can bring my story and share my experience. I joined the National Guard in 1999 during peacetime to go to college for free. I graduated from the College of New Jersey, started working, was activated in 2003, deployed to Iraq in March of 2004. We were situated in Baghdad, Iraq. After a couple of weeks, we were reassigned to Sadr City in Baghdad, which was one of the dangerous places at that time in 2004. After I was in Iraq for about 100 days in several firefights, IED explosions, and in June 3rd, 2004, an RPG, I was in a firefight, and an RPG struck the windshield of my ASV. I wasn't in a Humvee. If I was in a Humvee, I wouldn't be here today, and my whole team probably wouldn't be here today. I was in an armored security vehicle. The windshield was about a foot thick of ballistic glass. The RPG struck the windshield, blew a hole the size of a grapefruit in the windshield, and luckily I was looking down an alleyway to my right, and the glass and the rocket fragments just tore up the left side of my face. I had glass in both my eyes. I was rushed immediately to the combat field hospital in the Green Zone, which was about a 25-minute ride in a Humvee, and a full ophthalmology team came down in their PT clothes, their flip-flops, and evaluated me. Within 20 minutes, I was in the operating room, and then they removed glass from both my eyes. Unfortunately, they weren't able to save my left eye. I'm blind in my left eye, but thank God I have perfect vision in my right eye. So that was my story. I was after that surgery, I was sent to northern Iraq, where most of the casualties are sent, and then I was on an airplane to Landstuhl, Germany. Spent about a week there. Then I was ultimately moved to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., where I spent approximately the next 19 months recuperating. Had 5 or 6 different surgeries to repair my eye, plastic surgery to fix some of the disfigurement of my face. While at Walter Reed, some of you could probably remember the Building 18 problems, and I lived in Building 18 for a while. They early in the war, there was guys coming off the battlefield about 3 times a week. There was planes coming in, and we were talking in the back rooms before of being in combat and this and that. I was in Iraq for 100 days, and don't get me wrong, I've seen some bad things, and I've did some things I wouldn't ever imagine in my life doing. But being at Walter Reed with my fellow combat veterans and living with them, they were my roommates. I pushed their wheelchairs together, and seeing some of the guys and their terrible injuries, and double amputees, triple amputees, blind, burns, brain injuries. It was almost worse being at Walter Reed for those 19 months than actual being in Iraq itself. But the care I received at Walter Reed was first class. It was tremendous. Every doctor took me right away. Whether early before the clinic opened or stayed after the clinic closed, the doctors were there, and and the doctors on our panel, I'd like to say thank you for taking care of me and taking care of our fellow soldiers and the nurses. You know, I was on a long flights, and they kept us comfortable. You know, they were there to hold our hands when we had no idea what was going on. And you know, I'd like to thank you guys that are up here on the panel too. And that's basically my story. You know, we'll get involved a little more if they want to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Carl Cuttino is a fourth-year medical student here at New Jersey Medical School, and he is now applying for residency training in surgery and specifically urology. And he's our role model for all of us that wear uniforms are recruiting all the time. And I turn everybody over to Carl because he represents the New Jersey Army National Guard, and that's the best deal I know of in terms of scholarship programs for education of any sort.
Thank you, Dr. Swan. My name is Carl. I joined the military originally in 2001. I was a freshman at NYU in 2001 in September, and they woken up one morning on the 11th to planes flying into the Twin Towers. And a week later, I joined the military. I enlisted in the National Guard, and I originally was serving with soldiers that had enlisted before the events of September 11th, and I saw how something like that was unexpected, they weren't expecting to go to war, how that affected them when they came back. I served as an infantry officer, and recently was put into a medical unit in New Jersey in preparation for graduating medical school. And there I try and stay attuned to soldiers' psychological and physical needs. We're seeing about 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers this month, 1,500 this weekend down at Fort Dix. And we're doing medical clearances on them and seeing if we can identify these problems. And what's interesting to me is that a lot of these soldiers, we'll talk to them in the hallways, we'll see them in the cafeteria, and they're laughing and they're joking, and they seem to be completely normal. But when you talk to them as a medical professional, and when you see their screenings, you can see that there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things that have affected these people. And I'm just really glad the National Guard is giving them that attention, and I hope they can get the care that they deserve.
Thanks, Carl. Master Sergeant Chuck Arnold has been in uniform for many years and has been in many combat zones and has a great wealth of information to bring to this panel. And please tell us your thoughts at this point, Sergeant Arnold.
Well, first of all, it's a real privilege to be here, and as I look around the room, a lot of familiar faces who worked with us during the reconstitution phase at Fort Dix and then again at the 60-day. My career started a long time ago, 1965. I came out of high school and didn't have any direction, and so I joined the Marine Corps. I was drunk when I joined the Marine Corps. If I would have known what I was getting into, I would have joined the Marine Corps. But in all seriousness, what was going on at the time was Cuba was a hot spot. And so right after boot camp, I was sent to Cuba. And again, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I volunteered to work with a SEAL team. I didn't know what a SEAL team was, but I'm very fond of the Navy because I had my 6 months down in Cuba running 10 miles every day with the SEALs, and that was an interesting experience. Left Cuba, came back home, and was home for 8 days. And back at Camp Lejeune, and they called me in and said, we know you've been in Cuba, and we wanted to give you some time back home, but you have a critical MOS, communications, and they're killing radio operators faster than we can replace them, so we're going to send you to Vietnam. Nice way to be greeted. Did a 13-month tour in Vietnam, and knew that I wanted to go to college, knew that I wanted to do something with my life and helping people, but I wasn't sure what that was. The Marine Corps would not give me a 6-year duty station, which what I thought I needed to go to school. So I got out, stayed in the reserves, and switched over to the National Guard, and started out my education at Montclair State University. My initial clinical training, if you will, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So if anybody's having marriage problems, see me after. What really triggered for me, not only the war, and I'll talk about that in a second, but in 1995, I was asked to be part of the team that went out to the Oklahoma City bombing. And I can think of sitting or standing on top of the hill overlooking the bombing, with tears in my eyes, try to understand why somebody would do that. Why would somebody kill other people? And so at that time, I knew I wanted to move in a different direction and started my trauma training. Now, all along, I've been in the Guard part-time, working full-time as a personnel manager, and worked continually until 2005. I retired and went to Florida to see my new grandson and was going to come back and start a marriage and family therapy practice. I was retired one day, and I got a call from UMDNJ, and the questions they asked me is, we understand this is what we're looking for. We're looking at a combat veteran who's got a lot of military experience, who's got a lot of crisis background, has a lot of training, and is a people person. Do you know anybody? Well, it sounds like that might fit me. And so I went for the interview and actually started the program back with Sheree back April 13, 2005. And so in the 40-something years of work, I'm retired one day and continue right now to work with some of the greatest people, Rich and Charlie Angelo, who's over here also as part of our team, and Heather, who's not here. But what I can say to you, I'm very sincere, is that when I came back from Vietnam, no one was there for us. And I vowed that would never happen again. And so as our soldiers, men and women, come back, we want to be there for them, to help them, because if we don't catch post-traumatic stress early, that's when the problems begin. So I thank everybody who's here to listen to this. The message is, let's reach out hand in hand and help our veterans as they return from the war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chuck. It's very confusing for some of us who wear a green suit as to how you're in the Marine Corps, but you wear a Navy uniform, and you're really a captain, but you call yourself a colonel. And then there's George Hill, and I want to introduce George Hill sitting right up here. He's a 30-year veteran of service with the U.S. Navy, but he's wearing a Marine Corps uniform now, one I've never seen before, but he said he was a Marine before he was in the Navy, and of course the Marines are in the Navy. But it is very confusing. We'll try and keep it straight. Thanks.
I just love a man in uniform. I'm happy to see everyone in uniform.